everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to go over all of the 5-star reads that I've had so far in 2023. So I hope that you stick around. Maybe you'll find some books that maybe you haven't read, or maybe that you want to try. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments below if you have read any of these books, if you agree with my rating, or if you don't. Also, make sure that you like and subscribe so you don't miss any of my content. And then also, I have a giveaway going on over on my Patreon, which will be linked in the description below. And if you are a Patreon member, on July 1st, I am going to do a giveaway for the omnibus of Shadow Kissed by Rebecca L. Garcia, which has all 4 books in it. It has sprayed edges, signed by the author. This edition will not be offered again ever, so this is your one and only chance to get it. So definitely head on over to my Patreon so you can get entered into that giveaway. And then without further ado, let's get into the 5-star reads that I've had so far this year. So I actually, whenever I was compiling this list, I didn't realize that I had this many 5-star reads so far for the first half of the year. I have about 7 5-star reads, which is actually excellent in my eyes. There's a couple in there that I didn't expect to be 5-star reads. So if you've watched any of my previous videos, you will know which ones those are. But let's kind of go through them. I'll give you kind of a brief description on what is going on and, kind of what genre it falls into. So hopefully you'll find some that you like. I was thoroughly surprised with a few of these on here that they were that good for me. So the first one that I am going to start with is The Words by Ashley Jade. This book was my very first 5-star read of the year, I believe, and it's a contemporary romance. I didn't expect to like it the way that I did, but you are following Phoenix and Lennon. And Lennon, she is kind of like the straight A student. She, wants to go to college. She's very brainy and stuff. She's a bigger girl in high school whenever we meet her, so she's not popular at all. And then Phoenix is the guy that grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, I guess you would say. He's a bad boy. He has tattoos. He's not doing well in school. So one of the teachers approaches Lennon and asks her if she will tutor Phoenix so he can graduate because they're seniors. So you're following them at first whenever they're in high school, and you get to see how their friendship grows, which is actually beautiful. I really like how Phoenix isn't the typical guy where he judges Lennon on her looks or, kind of like her brainy personality. I really liked that about them. But as we progress through their friendship in high school, Phoenix, wants to be an aspiring rock star, and he betrays Lennon in a very bad way, okay, and breaks their friendship. She wants nothing to do with him. Fast forward 5 years, we meet Lennon, who is back at home taking care of her father, who is ill, and she dropped out of school to take care of him, so she's working at a local place in town. Phoenix is a big mega rock star, touring the world and everything with his band. And something happens with the band, and Phoenix kind of spirals into a depression. And in there, he, I guess, starts doing drugs, drinking a lot. So his PR team has said, well, we need to make sure that he stays on the straight and narrow. They keep firing people. And one of the bandmates who used to be around whenever they were in high school and saw their friendship suggested to their PR team, why don't you get Lennon? So they offer Lennon an exuberant amount of money that if she finishes like the 6 weeks, I believe, being with Phoenix and keeping him on the straight and narrow, she'll get it. So now you're following them after the betrayal. She wants revenge, and it was so good. I loved the characters. I loved the plot. I loved everything about it. There are some trigger warnings in here, so I will expressed, definitely check those out before you go into this book. But even if you're not a contemporary romance reader, I suggest giving this a shot. I have never read from this author before. I read this book. I am actually about to read one of the spin-off books that follows two other characters that are from this series. This book. And it's pretty big, so definitely know going in that it is a chunker, but I did not expect to fly through it as quick as I did. I couldn't get enough of Phoenix and Lennon, their banter, the world around them. I fell in love with them, and I wish that I could go back to this world and read this book again because I feel like it was very impactful. So definitely check out The Words by A. Jade if you have not yet. It is wonderful. It will grasp you. Make sure that the trigger warnings aren't bad for you. I just think that this is definitely a must read for anybody, especially if you're a contemporary romance reader. But even if you're not, I think this will hit home for you. The next book was another surprise for me that I could not believe that I ended up giving it 5 stars because it's a nonfiction. It's an autobiography, I believe, and that is Spare by Prince Harry. So I know this will not be for everybody. Not everybody likes the royal family. Not everybody likes the gossip and drama and things like that. I suggest if you are going to read this and you are not a nonfiction reader, get this on Audible because Prince Harry actually narrates it himself. So you get to feel his emotions as he's going through the different things of his life. He will sing, he will cry, you will hear his voice quake whenever there are emotional moments. He definitely portrays the story very well because, of course, it is his story, his true life story. But I think that the way that he narrates it, you get consumed into it a lot more than you would if you just read it. But you are following Harry, obviously, throughout his life. And even though there's not sections of the life, I always like to say, like, the first third of the book is whenever he was younger, when his mom was alive, when his mom, died, and how he kind of got through that grieving process. The second part of his life is whenever he is kind of in his beginning 20s, mid-20s, when he's going through military, going through, the war over in Iraq and things like that. And then the last third of the book is whenever, he meets Meghan and what they went through, and you get to hear from his own voice, what actually happened instead of what was in tabloids and stuff. So I really found this intriguing. I love the royal family anyway. I just love anything about the royal family. However, I really loved this book because you get an in-depth view of how royal life is, how being raised in royal life is, and also what Harry actually went through, because what you read in tabloids or, here on the news isn't always 100% accurate. So I really enjoyed hearing about his life. I do suggest audio for this book, like I said, because it is just a whirlwind experience. I couldn't stop listening to it. So I was thoroughly shocked that a nonfiction autobiography book was a 5-star read for me this year. However, I absolutely loved it, and I probably will read this again this year at some point because it was just that amazing. The next book that I gave 5 stars, which is going to be no surprise because it is going around BookTube quite a lot and even Book Talk and stuff, but that is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. So this book gained a lot of hype, and I know that it's kind of died down a little bit because now there's like The Fourth Wing and other books that have came out, but the first beginning of this year, this book was all anybody could talk about. And I don't like that people kept referring to it as, if you like ACOTAR, read this book. This book is nothing like A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I think the only aspect that you may garner from the Sarah J. Maas books to this book is maybe the romance and the love interest. That's about it. There's nothing that really connects them together or is similar in any way. But in this book, you are following Aurea. Aurea is a human girl. She was living in a village. They live in, this vampire world where it's broken up into three, sections or whatever. And she grew up in the Nightborn realm. And one night her family is slaughtered. Her whole town is slaughtered. It's on fire. And in comes Vincent. He is the Nightborn king. He saves Aurea and brings her back to the palace. He raises her as his own daughter. He teaches her the vampire ways. He teaches her how to fight, how to, navigate the politics and everything. But he keeps her sheltered as well. Because every time she wants to leave, he always says, Aurea, you're easily broken. You do not want to be, in the clutches of vampires and stuff. Because the vampires in this world are very ruthless. They are unforgiving. They are bloodlust. They are not what, normal vampires are that you've heard on, like Twilight and, different things like that. These vampires are ruthless. They don't care. And I really liked that about this world. So finally, Aurea, becomes like in her early 20s, I believe. And she wants to compete in the Kajari, which is a tournament that happens every 100 years. And all these vampires go up against each other. The one that wins the Kajari actually gets a favor from the goddess Nyaxia. So she wants to compete in the Kajari, even though she's only a human. She wants to win the Kajari, and she wants to, bond herself to Vincent, her father, but not like in a romantic way, just where they can power share, so she'll be safe. So she enters the Kajari, and each level of the competitions goes by the moon phases. So you don't always, it's not like an every night type of competition. You'll have a competition one night, and then 2 weeks later another competition, and then a month later another competition. So you are thrusted into the moon palace where you live amongst all of the people. You are not allowed to kill each other in between the trials, but you have to make some allies, and she's the only human in there, so she is very vulnerable, and she ends up becoming allies with Rain. And Rain is this vampire who didn't want to be in the Kajari. He only joined it for his friend, but their friendship blossoms to a romance that is absolutely exquisite. However, this is a very fast-paced read. This is not heavy on the romance, even though there is romance in here. It focuses more on the politics and the world and the vampires and the Kajari itself. I absolutely loved it. I was flying through this book. The world building was excellent. The pacing was amazing. I couldn't get enough of all of the characters. I was always, wanting to read one more chapter and one more chapter because I felt like the Kajari was just so action-packed. You didn't know what was going to happen. Carissa Broadbent does not hold any punches whenever it comes to killing off characters and, making characters go through brutal tasks and being on the brink of death multiple times. I love that about this world. So I do continue to read. I want to continue to read from Carissa. She is now a new loved author. But if you want a fantasy world that has romance in there, but is very action-packed and very heavy on the politics and is just a fast-paced read that you will just be sucked into this world, definitely pick up The Serpent and the Wings of Night, because it was just absolutely amazing. So all the hype that is going on about this book is very well warranted, because it definitely deserves all of that. The next book that is a 5-star read was a book that I read last year in November, but I reread it again this year because I did like a video where it was like I read 20 Kindle Unlimited books and told you which ones were worth it. Whenever you read that many books in a short amount of time, some books you forget a lot of the plot or a lot of like the story, and this book always kept my attention no matter what. So I ended up getting the physical copy, I guess. I don't remember ordering that, but I read it again. adored it. And that is An Enchantment of Thorns by Helena Rookwood and Elm Vince. This book is on Kindle Unlimited, so you don't have to have a physical copy, but it is absolutely amazing. You are following, I can't even remember her name. You guys know I'm bad with names. Aster. Aster is a green witch in her community, and the community is surrounded by what's called the Folkwood. And the Folkwood is where the Fae live. Now, you are raised to think that the Fae are horrible, that they are mean, they'll kidnap you, all of these things. So her being the only green witch in town, she is tasked with keeping the surrounding Folkwood at bay so it doesn't keep, progressing into their town. And she also heals people and, makes medicinal, things for people to get over sicknesses and things like that. Well, every year, I believe, or every couple years, they have like this tithe or this like dance where whoever, like with the Fae Lord or the Fae Prince, whatever, will come to their village and pick one girl that is in that group of girls and take them back to the Fae realm, and then you never hear from them again. So so she asked her, believes that you get murdered, you never hear from these women again, you don't know what's happening. So here comes her sister, who idolizes the Fae, wants to be taken by the Fae Prince, and so she is trying to convince her sister this is not a good idea, all of these things. Well, Aster ends up being there whenever the tithe happens, and she's the one that gets taken, and she's the only green witch. So now her town is left without a healer, without somebody that can keep the Folkwood at bay. So she is back, and all she wants to do is try to find a way back home. She tries to escape, all of these things. But Thorn, who is the Fae Prince, is like, you can't leave. He's very mysterious. She asks him all these questions about what happened to the other girls. And this story progresses from there. You find out more about the world. You find out what's going on, what's happening with Thorn, what is truly in the Folkwood, who really are enemies and who are really your allies. And it is kind of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but very loosely. I would probably only say that the only thing that really correlates to Beauty and the Beast is her being kidnapped and held, and him being kind of like a beast at certain times. That's about it. Everything else is very unique. I absolutely loved it. There are 3 books in this series. This is book 1. I plan on continuing on to the next one here pretty soon. But if you love a Fae fantasy romance and you love kind of more of an uplifting type of story, one that has not an enormous amount of world building, so it's not dense, but one that you can, fully get into very easily, just pick up the book at random and just sink right back into the story, this book will definitely be for you. It was absolutely amazing. 5 stars. I could not get enough of Aster and Thorn and the world that they are in. So another recommendation for anybody who loves those type of books. So let's shift gears a little bit, because this book was another surprise for me on a 5-star read. I did not expect, because I normally don't like books in this genre, but I got it in an Illumicrate Afterlight box before I canceled that series, because I realized a lot of the books are not books that I would necessarily read. So this one is X's and O's by Amy Lee. This is a rom-com. So if you are someone who loves romantic comedy, if you are someone who loves lighthearted reads and, not necessarily enemies to lovers, but like strangers to friends to lovers, this book is definitely going to be for you. So our female main character, again, I am terrible with names, Tara. Tara is a influencer, a bookstagrammer. She gets on and does vlogs, for her books and, different reads and things like that. So you can connect with her in that way very instantly. But she lives with her sister, and her sister gets engaged to this guy who lives with his best friend Trevor. So her sister wants to live with her fiance, so they decide, let's switch apartments. You can go live with Trevor. I'm going to have my fiance move in here. So she agrees. And she goes and she moves in with Trevor, and the very first day she walks in, and what is happening? Trevor is having sex with somebody on the kitchen counter. Just right there. So she runs and hides in the bathroom. And then, of course, Trevor, they talk between the door, and then, they kind of get to know each other a little bit. So then she sinks into this new life of living with this guy who is a firefighter. She doesn't really know much about him, but she trusts him because her future brother-in-law trusts him. So, she's living with him. They're trying to adapt to it. And then she talks with her grandmother, and her grandmother talks about a second chance romance that she had gotten in her life. And of course, Tara wants nothing more than a second chance romance. So she decides to vlog this experience. And she decides to go through all 11 of her exes and redate them, see if, a second chance romance can spark up for her. And as she's going through, Trevor becomes like her best friend, her wingman. So he's coaching her, teaching her how to do things. And this story is just absolutely amazing. I loved everything about it. I loved the banter between Tara and Trevor. I loved the, world around it, how she is invested in Bookstagram and doing vlogs and wanting the second chance romance. And her commentary just for herself is just one that makes you smile through the whole book, because there are laugh out loud moments. There is, moments where you feel sorry for her. You can connect to her very quickly into the book. And I also loved Trevor. Trevor was a delight as well. You may not really get his POV at all, but you also, get to know Trevor really well, and Trevor is nothing but a delight. So pick this up if you want a very lighthearted read, one that's going to make you smile through the whole book. If you love romantic comedy, I suggest X's and O's for anybody if you want to get out of a reading slump, if you want to read something that's normally out of your genre, because it was just perfection. If you want honesty, just perfection. So the final 2 books on this list are going to be in my June wrap up. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details, because you can find more of my thoughts later on in the month whenever I do my wrap up. But these are 2 books that I read this month, and they're 5-star reads. I just can't get enough of them. So the first one was kind of one that I didn't expect, but it is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This is book 1 in the new trilogy. Of course, Caraval is the original trilogy, but people say you don't have to read Caraval because it doesn't actually deal with those characters. I disagree. I read Caraval before I dove into this series, and you want to know who Jax is, and you want to get kind of some background. So I do suggest reading Caraval before diving into this, but you don't necessarily have to, because you learn who Jax is along the way. So if you don't want to read 3 books before you get into this, that's perfectly fine. But this series is absolutely amazing. I love everything about this series. I was not a huge Caraval fan, so I was very, hesitant going into this. But Jax, oh my goodness. Jax is mean and ruthless and sexy, and oh my gosh, I'm in love with Jax. Just absolutely in love with him. You're following Evangeline Fox. And Evangeline, you start out where she finds out that the love of her life is getting married to her sister. And she wants to stop the wedding because she wants to be with her love of life. So she goes to this church for the Prince of Hearts, and she prays to him, and he appears, and she asks of a favor for him to stop the wedding. So he agrees to do that if she agrees to give him 3 kisses whenever he chooses. Now, Jax, his kisses are lethal. They will kill anybody unless they are his true love. So Evangeline is like, well, if I kiss you, I'm going to die. And he said, no, I don't want you to kiss me. I want you to kiss 3 people of my choosing. So she agrees. He stops the wedding, but everyone is turned to stone. So she doesn't want anyone to die. So she ends up sacrificing herself and makes herself stone and everyone else back to life. But the wedding is stopped. And anyway, she ends up getting out of that. And she's now looked at as like the town hero and all of these things. So then she ends up finding out that they tried to get married again, but the boy that she loves ends up getting mauled by like a bear or a lion or something like that. So they believe that her sister is the cursed bride. So nobody wants to marry her. He goes off to try to get healed or whatever. And so the queen of this, area calls upon her to go north to this other kingdom and participate in their noctur something. Anyway, it's where the prince of that area has to propose to somebody, and it is going to continue to be a celebration until he chooses somebody. So the queen of this realm is, characters from the Caraval trilogy, but they're only briefly mentioned, so it doesn't really matter. Jax is in the Caraval trilogy. He is a main character in the 2nd and 3rd book, but like I said, you get to learn Jax's character in this series anyway. So she goes north with her sister, and she's participating in this. Well, guess who's there? Jax. And Jax is like, oh, I want you to kiss the prince. Things fall apart, curses happen, all of a sudden she's running for her life, trying to stay alive. Jax is there. She doesn't know if she wants to trust him, but she doesn't know why she loves him. All of these things. I did make a video, and you can go back and watch it, about how I read this and The Ballad of Never After in 24 hours if you want to go hear more thoughts on it. But this world, so beautiful. The characters are so great. I fell in love with everything about this very early on. It is an easy read, so if you're not really into the fantasy genre per se, you would still love this book because it's very easy to pick up, very easy to grasp. It's not a dense book. But this series, I can't wait until the 3rd book comes out this year. This one and The Ballad of Never After were both 5 stars, and I can't wait until the 3rd book comes out later on this year because The Ballad of Never After ended on the biggest cliffhanger I think I've ever read in a book, and I cannot wait until it comes out. So if you want a good romance, if you want characters that you can fall in love with, and you want a very lighthearted kind of world, definitely pick up Once Upon a Broken Heart. It was just absolutely so delightful. This is one of the pre-order covers. Isn't it so gorgeous? So definitely pick that up. The final 5-star book that I have so far in 2023 is Bewitched by Laura Thalassa. Of course, I already knew that this was probably going to be a 5-star because Laura Thalassa is one of my favorite authors. But this is called Bewitched, and it goes back to like the bargainer world, but you're not, around Desmond and and Callie and all of them. But you are following Celine, and Celine is a witch where whenever she casts magic, she loses memories, and she doesn't get to pick and choose which memories she loses. So if she casts a spell, she could lose her memory from yesterday of, something that she agreed upon. So she doesn't know. Her memories are all over the place. She's trying to get into Henbane Coven, where she's wanting to be a part of their coven. It's kind of like a college type setting for witches. So she's been applying for a year, and they keep rejecting her. Finally, one of them comes to her and says, if you can find a familiar and you can go on a witch quest and submit your paper, we will let you into Henbane Coven. So she decides, okay, I'm going to try to figure out where to go on my witch quest. Well, she ends up drinking a lot, wakes up the next day, finds out that she has purchased herself tickets to South America. And she's like, great, how am I going to afford this? So she goes, There are complications on the plane along the way. She starts hearing voices. She ends up going down. She saves the plane from crashing, but then she follows this voice. She ends up waking up this old king, shall you say. And, she's like, great, what have I unleashed on the world? She finds her familiar who ends up being a panther, which is actually pretty interesting. I love that little detail that Laura decided to do, instead of having like an owl or a cat or a dog, she is a panther, which is amazing. So she goes back to, the city, writes up her report. She gets accepted into Henbane Coven. She moves into the dorms there. And things get wild from there because now the guy that she let loose is like, you're my soulmate. I love you. We're going to be together. And she's like, no, I am not who you say I am. And my name is Celine. And that is not who I am. So this just gets wild. It is amazing. I love Laura Thalassa's writing because as you're reading it, you are like, oh yeah, I could actually say that. I could see these conversations happening between me and my friends. Like, it is just one of those books that flows very well. The characters' banter and commentary just seems very, authentic and real. The story is just absolutely amazing. The characters are amazing. Just everything about this book. So if you like witch fantasy romance books, if you loved the Bargainer series by Laura Thalassa, if you like books that you can just easily fly through and it just seems like, you're turning page after page so quickly and you're not even realizing, this book is amazing. I cannot wait until the next book in this series comes out. I know this just released back in April, but I'm ready for book 2. It left on a cliffhanger again that I just could not believe. I am all here for Celine. I am all here. I don't even remember. Memnon is the guy that she unleashes on the world. So I can't wait to hear about their, love story and like how they're going to get out of this. Cause this is true enemies to lovers. Like, they both hate each other. They both try to kill each other. I mean, this is very authentic enemies to lovers. So if you're into that trope, definitely pick this book up. So those are all of the 5-star reads that I've had so far this year. I predict I'm going to have, a few more before the year ends. And so I will wrap up the latter half of 2023 of 5-star reads at the end of the year. But definitely let me know any of the books that you have read that were on my list. Let me know what your star ratings were or what your thoughts were in the comments below. Or let me know if any of these books you're going to pick up. Also, make sure that you head on over to my Patreon because we only have just a little bit of time left until that giveaway happens. So you definitely don't want to miss that as well. So until next time, everybody, I hope you have a great day. Bye.